So, after finishing the Veiled Society down in the grand city of Specularum, my mostly elven players all decided to go back up home, go back to their roots in the forest. Met up with the Yandere, which was great. Drespin, that was a nice little bridge there. And then I had all intentions of just basically dropping them into Night's Dark Terror. Now, Night's Dark Terror is a fantastic module by Jim Bambra, Graham Morrison, Phil Gallagher. It's B10. It's basically levels 2 to 4. It's a nice transition into. It's meant for dungeon play, but in this case, it was like city into more of a wilderness setting, and without getting too high level. So, but it does open up with one heck of a deadly encounter, which is an ambush. And I'll bring up the specs here, but basically the characters are going up river, and the chain is pulled across the river barge, and the barge is suddenly stopped, and then they get ambushed by a bunch of, they're called Iron Ring Slavers. So there's archers, and then there's thieves that are going to swim across the river to board the boat. And, it's pretty dramatic stuff. I decided to up it a level, so I made a video here and using Owl Bear Rodeo just to show how the encounter went and how lucky one of the players got on the rolls. So we'll go into this, and then I'll show their pursuit when I finally got to spring my my river crossing gorge bridge trap, and it was pretty cool. Anyway, let's get into that. So Night's Dark Terror B10 contains one of the great ambushes in Dungeons and Dragons. And it actually happens while the party is going up a river to get to their destination on a river barge. So let's introduce our party. This is Sayrel. She's a drow paladin. She came from a magic mirror, and she's the only drow in the world that anyone knows of right now. Melnurian, my half-elf, basically archer, scout. Nuvian, he's a magic user, full elf, Kaleri elf, wizard magic user, whatever you want to say. Estella is a cleric, basically a cleric of nature. So those right there are my 4 NPCs. Staja is a person they met in Specularum. He's a giant of a man, about 6'8", 300 pounds. Basically, he's an oarsman, not very bright, loves to drink. Good-natured, fun-loving fellow. Kalden, he's a dwarf that Staja met the night before in a bar in Kelvin, which is just downriver here. So, what they don't know that is Kalden is actually a spy for the Iron Ring Slavers, and he's actually kind of weaseled his way into Staja's good graces to get a job on this boat, and he's been working with the Iron Ring Slavers who've set up this trap. Kalanos here is the captain of the ship that Staja knows, and he's basically the one taking them across. This gray line right here is the chain across the river that the people who've laid the trap have set up. So let's see if I can zoom out a little. So things change a little when you zoom out. So basically, lying in wait, I've got 8 archers, a spellcaster, I've got a leader of the Iron Ring Slavers, and just a bunch of first level sort of thief hounds here. So here's the plan. Like, it already has a really good ambush in Night's Dark Terror with the chain. I upped it a little. I added a wizard spellcaster. Now here's the plan. As these guys raised the chain that was hidden in the water, and tie it off onto stumps and whatnot. Mr. Spellcaster here launches a sleep at the entire crew and occupants. This is devastating. Now, while he does this, the archers are ready and primed. Anybody remaining standing will be shot at with arrows. The hounds will come and see if they can board the ship. So what happens here is that it's all going to plan, and I gave everybody a saving throw versus surprise. Now, I know normally in basic, surprise is like a 1 to 2 on D6, but I do it a little differently. I let people basically save versus Dragon Breath, and that's your save versus surprise. So, in this case, basically everybody was surprised except the one person who could actually make a big difference here, and that was Nuvian, the wizard spellcaster. And even though that was the first thing that went right, they really needed 4 things to go right to prevent this from just being a bloodbath. And I don't think they realized how lucky they were, the chain of events. So first he made his save versus surprise. That's great. Okay, so before the chain was raised, he noticed maybe this fellow up here was getting ready to cast the spell. Alright, so roll initiative. Just these 2. Everybody else is surprised. He wins initiative. That's the second thing he needs to go right. Then, okay, so he casts a sleep spell. The third thing he needed to go right was for this fellow to fail his save versus spells for sleep. He actually failed it. I'm very lucky, because otherwise, if he'd made his save, the sleep spell still would have went off, and a lot of people over here would have been affected. At that point, a handful of archers went down, and there you go. So, here's the other stroke of luck that he had. The fourth thing was that Kaladin, who's actually a higher level rogue, moved up to get a backstab on Nuvian, and actually had him surprised, and could have easily taken him out if I rolled higher than a 4. Now remember, this is all on Discord. There are no fudge die rolls here. This is how it played out. This is like a dice bot that everybody can see. So don't think I'm being kind to my players, because I'm not. It's just they got extremely lucky in the opening stage of events here. So basically what happened, so sleep spell, I think 3 archers left awake start waking everybody up. Melnurian gets into position, plugs the spellcaster with an arrow before he can get up to more mischief, literally takes him down. Kaladin here, once he missed, nobody engaged him for the second one, just turned tail and ran. The leader jumps into the trees, he's getting his longbow ready, probably going after anybody he assumes is a threat. Which in this case is mainly Melnurian, because he's an archer himself. The hoods jump into the water, they're getting ready to board the boat, but that's when Nuvian strikes again, because while these archers are waking one another up, and the spellcaster has passed away, Nuvian launches a second sleep spell. Now in my game, I use intelligence as extra spell slots, so because he had a high intelligence, which actually got lucky and had 18, he gets 3 extra first level spell slots. So he can cast a number of sleeps a day. So there you go. So boom, second sleep on these hounds in the water as they're trying to get in. It's not going to kill them, but taking the water damage does do a little bit of hit point damage to them, and they will wake up in the next round, but it takes away their action. Renders them inoperable, gives people time to turn around. The other thing that happened was that Estella, my kind of cleric of nature, cast an entangle as well. So she tied up some movement over here as people get a chance to sort of plug the archers and return fire. So people are, taking damage, but not too bad. They're hard to hit. The battle goes on. Eventually, the hounds all mostly drown or get bashed as they're trying to board. the archers, even though they're not doing too badly, once they hit half strength, they basically failed a morale check, and their discretion is the better part of value. Virtue, they take off. You know, they're not. This is just business. They're not in it. Nothing personal, of course. The leader and Calden also take off. So the party's faced with an interesting dilemma. Do I go to the north bank and pursue the archers, or the south bank to pursue the leader and the dwarf? So tough call. They went to the north, and what they discovered up here is kind of interesting, was that the sleep spell this fellow was using, Nuvian discovered it was from his master's spell book. Now, I'll get into that little bit of fun here next. But yeah, so they decided not to go after the archers, and they went back down south. They examined some of the hounds' bodies, who really had nothing, just like a dagger and maybe a few silver or something like that. Very low-level grunts. But they did have interest to track the leader and the dwarf. And at that point, I thought, since they've got such a good head start, wouldn't it be interesting to have my rope bridge trap that I've already designed, that the leader and the dwarf could set off? So I'll get into that one in a bit. Owlbear Rodeo again. Our heroes, just the 4 of them this time, have trapped the leader of the Iron Ring Slavers, along with the bad dwarf who betrayed them, through the woods, and basically to this rope bridge. Now, from my previous video, you knew I'd already constructed the rope bridge trap. Originally, my plan was to use it with goblins, but I said, hey, since they've given the bad guys a head start and enough time, let's use it now. So what happens is both the dwarf and the bad guy have gone across. They've soaked this middle part in lantern oil and then continued their way. The boss is basically waiting on the other side with a pitch arrow ready to light it as soon as half the party have gone across. Now this played out pretty much exactly how I predicted. The wizard and the archer are going to be lookouts, wait for the ambushed, while the other two actually argued about who went first. So in the end, the half-elf cleric went out, so she moved 15. Now why'd she move 15? I explained that if you use half movement, even though the bridge is kind of in bad shape, take it nice and slow. You don't have to make any checks to get across. So she moved another 15 feet. Once she got to here, I allowed her a skill check. I didn't say what it was for. I just said roll my 2d6. It was basically to see if she could detect the scent of the kerosene, or maybe that it was slick over here. But again, the reason I needed a roll is because her eyes were forward as well, waiting for the ambush. Unfortunately, I think she rolled like a 4, so it wasn't high enough to detect, so she continued on her merry way another 15 feet. Then the final 15 feet, no problem. Alright, so I explained, hey, nothing happens. You made it across, you were careful, that's great. The Drow Paladin decides to throw a curveball and say, well, I'm going to move 20 feet per round. So I did have her make skill checks, but they were very easy ones. I think it was like a DC 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20 gets to there. No problem. Keeps going 5, 10, 15, 20. Because she's moving 20, I ruled that she was not going to be able to detect the oil here. But as she got to here, that's when the bad guy shot, aiming for the bridge. And I rolled pretty well for that one. I think he rolled an 18 to hit this section, so no problem. Boom! Arrow catches this, lights on fire. Now the Drow Paladin has a choice. Do I go backwards across the ignited flames or continue on the other side? She makes a dash for the other side. At this point, I did have her roll like halfway, and she actually failed her skill check, so she went down through. At this point, these two have the choice. Do they want to chance the bridge or stay where they are? They elected to stay where they are and be ready with arrow or magic missile for anybody on the other side. This elf comes to help the other elf, and luckily she did, because she actually failed her skill check again to right herself. But I ruled, because she's assisting, I gave her the 3d6 keep highest 2, which basically saved her bacon, because if she didn't, even though she was refusing help, she would have failed and fallen. But our other half-elf was able to kind of get a hold of her and haul her to better places, and the two of them made it across before the ropes unraveled, burned down, and boom, the bridge is gone. So that was fun. That worked well. I could have, I didn't, and I almost should have had the dwarf ready as well. As it was, they had even a heck of a fight with just the one guy who shot the bridge. Just bad luck. Interestingly enough, what saved their bacon was that the half-elf, even though she's not much of a fighter, she rolled really well on her to hit to grapple, and basically took away the attack of the guy against the drow. So that kind of turned the tide of battle, and that the drow was able to get in some hits without getting hit back while they struggled, and he struggled to free himself, and he did. But at that point, it was too late. She had enough attacks to kind of even score. If I had have included the dwarf there, it would have been very nasty, because I could have had a nice backstab on one of them, and I honestly probably would have wound up killing both PCs if I'd done that. So just I'm too nice as a dungeon master. What can I say? Anyways, that's how that played out. It was fun. It was very strategic, and I think it worked very well. So there you have it. So that was the result of my two pre-planned ambushes or traps, as you were. I think it went off really well. Stood a pretty good chance of having some player character deaths, to be honest. They got lucky. And with the rope bridge, I think I was just nice. But yeah, well, then they got lucky too. But I also wanted to say that we've moved to from OSR to 5th edition, because I've got two players that kind of like 5e better. I've got one that likes OSR, one's on the fence, and I'm good either way. I will say 5th edition's Dungeons & Dragons does a much better job of balancing the classes, but I had to come up with a concept to sort of not get too crazy. One of the things, it's had an evolution, so you've got more races, you've got more classes, more subclasses, more options for players. It's a lot for your dungeon master, so please be aware. So I basically created like a Godsmark campaign in a very small setting. Basically, there's only humans, there's hill dwarfs, and there's half-elves. Elves do exist, but they can't be player characters. Half-elves are very rare. Hill dwarfs, there used to be mountain dwarfs, but they're all wiped out from a historical battle with gnomes. So basically, gnomes are the bad guys here. They had a huge war about 30 years ago, but also the gnomes did something very bad a long time ago that basically culminated in war with the dwarves. So it's kind of interesting. But the whole idea of Godsmark is 1 in 20 are born with this Godsmark, and it's actually random. I've got a table that you roll a d20 for, and if you roll a 20, you roll again on the table you really don't want to roll on for like the non-approved gods. So this way, and only Godsmarked individuals can advance to first level. Like basically everybody's normal human except for these 1 in 20, and even the 1 in 20 may not survive to maturity, just whether society eliminates them or bad things happen, right? Because if you're born with the wrong mark, in Civilization, they recognize, you know, you have the mark of the Archfiend. It's not going to go well for you, right? Anyway, so I'll update that. I've already won round 1 adventure. I think the players enjoyed it. It was a purchased one, but it was pretty fun. So they haven't even made it through there yet. But yeah, I'll update that. I do like the OSR, the old school, but I also like 5th edition too because it's a little more. I think it gives player characters more options. And the thing, if I'm playing online, I actually prefer 5th edition just because of D&D Beyond, and you can integrate that into Discord, and it's very easy for online play. In person, you know, old school, very simple, right? Online, still simple, but there's many more options for players to sort of port their players into an online server. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But yeah, I'll get into my whole Godsmark campaign and the first adventure and the characters and show how it went in next videos. But hope you enjoyed the 2 traps if you want to use them in your game. I did give the links before to the 2-minute tabletop maps. I'll probably do it again. And yeah, you know, for $1 or whatever it is for the map, it's a kind of a cool way to set up ambushes and surprise your players. There you go. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. See you next time. Bye-bye.